What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to the final video in my Terminator review series with the worst movie in this franchise already, and that is Terminator Genesys. This was the most recent Terminator film we got before we got Dark Fate that came out a few years ago. And I saw this movie in the theater when it came out back in 2015, and it stars Arnold Schwarzenegger, Emilia Clarke, Courtney, and Jason Clarke as well. And what this movie is about, it's about basically just ignore, like, if you were to watch this movie, you technically could watch this without watching the previous four movies that came before it. And this movie is supposed to be about how another Terminator was sent back in time to protect Sarah Connor when she was 9, and they say the Judgment Day still happened, and the plot's very confusing, and yeah, this is the worst movie in the franchise, in my opinion. And it's also one of the worst movies ever made, and also my opinion. And some people can agree with me on that one. But I will say that this review is going to not only be a review, it's going to be kind of a rant because I have a lot to say about this movie, and so much of this movie was wrong for me. Because if anybody knows me, Terminator is one of my favorite franchises, and it's also a franchise that's near and dear to me, especially the first two and a little bit of Dark Fate. But I will say that this franchise did so much stuff wrong that I almost don't have anything positive to say about it. Nothing about this movie works for me at all. So let's just get into what I hated about this movie. It's not what I didn't like, it's about what I hated. A lot of things this movie did wrong. For one thing, this movie was directed by a guy named Alan Taylor, who I guess directed the second Thor movie, which I have seen, and it's honestly not really a bad movie in my opinion. This movie was definitely the lowest point for him. But I will say that thing number one this movie did wrong for this franchise is that it completely fucked up the timeline for the previous Terminator films. For one thing, this movie pretty much erases the original Terminator as well as Terminator 2. And so because the Terminator was sent back in time to protect Sarah Connor, it pretty much erases what the original Terminator did. And for one thing, they replace a lot of the actors from the previous films as well. Like the T-1000 is no longer played by Robert Patrick, who sold that role. That's probably one of his best roles in my opinion. In this movie, he's replaced by an Asian guy whose name I cannot remember. Hated that part of the movie. And Jai Courtney now plays Kyle Reese, and I'm not a fan of Jai Courtney by any means. He was not great in A Good Day to Die Hard. I didn't even like him that much in the two Suicide Squad movies that we got. Didn't like him in that either. I don't like him as an actor, and he doesn't play very good characters. So if anything, he also brought this movie to a low point for me. And another thing about this movie that did not work, okay, let's just say this. A lot of the casting in this movie does not work. Arnold Schwarzenegger was the only person who pretty much is familiar to this franchise. Even he was a low point for this movie because his humor was not very well done. If anything, there's a joke that he constantly refers back to throughout the film that I just don't like, and it's when he keeps on asking Sarah Connor, played by Emilia Clarke, who said, he keeps saying, did you guys mate yet? And it's like, dude. And she even references it by saying that it's not funny what he says and you should stop saying that. I guess that was one little self-aware part of the movie, but still, it doesn't work for me. So Arnold Schwarzenegger, this is the first time Arnold Schwarzenegger in a Terminator film does not save the film. If anything, he could have been the huge high point of this movie, but he isn't. And also, back to Jai Courtney as Kyle Reese. For one thing, I know that Kyle Reese was replaced by another actor back in Salvation, and I don't think he was badass enough. Let me say this. Jai Courtney does nothing to capture the kind of charm and the badassery that Michael Biehn brought to the original Kyle Reese in the original Terminator film, and he is in a flashback if you watch a certain cut of Terminator 2. And let me just tell you, Jai Courtney does nothing. This movie makes me want to go back and rewatch the first two films because those two films are perfect. This movie is a failure from start to finish. Another casting choice I think really failed on this movie is Emilia Clarke as Sarah Connor. Now, I will admit, Emilia Clarke has gotten better with her career, and she kind of does play a badass in Game of Thrones, which I have seen. I've seen the first 6 seasons now. I haven't seen the 7 and 8 one yet, but For me, she is not Sarah Connor for me. She does not capture what Linda Hamilton brought to this role back when Linda Hamilton did this back in 1984 and 1991 with the second film. She does not, Emilia Clarke does not bring to this role what Linda Hamilton did. She's a complete failure. She's not badass enough. She's just good looking. And that's it. It's like, nope, doesn't work for me. Another thing is that the action sequences aren't that great. Particularly, there's a lot of shaky cam, and there's a lot of sequences that go on for so long, and it just doesn't work for me. It just keeps on going, and I don't know. And plus, they just end on really weird notes. And plus, the main issue I have with this movie, actually two issues. The main two issues with this movie I have are they completely mess up the timeline, particularly by erasing the second and first film altogether. And yeah, it's like they're going to places that we've seen before in the previous films, and I guess some people could call that nostalgia. For anybody who defends this movie, you could call that nostalgia, like, oh my god, there's the clothing store from the first movie that Kyle Reese was in. Not a very good callback, and also the fact that they F it up like that, it does not work. It fails at every turn. And also bringing back like the T-1000, played by a different actor, not Robert Patrick, and bringing him back to that timeline in '84 does not work here. It doesn't. It's like they were like, you know what? If you like the previous four films at all, okay, well, fuck you. We're gonna make our own timeline. It's like, thanks a lot, asshole. So that's why I hate this movie. But the biggest gripe that I have to this movie is the fact that, and this is what is going to make this review a rant, because this is the biggest issue they came up with, and that I hated it so bad, is that you decided, and by you I mean the people who made this film, they decided to turn John Connor, the guy we're supposed to be rooting for throughout the previous four films, we're supposed to be rooting for him, and they turn him into a Terminator, and he becomes the bad guy in this movie. Now, if he was bad for a short period of time, like for a few minutes of the movie, and then he turns good again by, like, if they were to get the Terminator out of him or whatever, and he becomes human again, fine, that would be fine. Like, that would have probably saved the movie a little bit. But nope, they end up killing him. Yeah, I hate the way that they did that with his character. Now, Jason Clarke is a great actor, but he does not play a good John Connor in my mind. I mean, I don't think he's even as good as Christian Bale was, but he was better than what Nick Stahl brought to the character in Terminator 3, where he was kind of a wimp. But in this movie, he's a little bit better than Nick Stahl, but he's not as good as Christian Bale. So that's one thing that you can take away from Jason Clarke's performance here as John Connor. And yeah, so all in all, guys, it's no question about it. Terminator Genesys is the worst Terminator film in this entire franchise. The casting was bad, the complete messing up the timeline was bad, and the complete turning the good guy, the main guy we're supposed to be following, into the bad guy, like turning him into a villain, was one of the worst decisions they could have ever made. And it's no question that this was one of the worst movies ever made. And also, this was supposed to start a trilogy, which, thank God, this movie bombed at the box office, because if we had gotten two more movies like this, I would have completely gone off the rails with this franchise. And I would have probably disowned Terminator as a franchise, or one of my favorites. I would have just said, no, just the first two films, just worry about those. But thank God we got this, and I do think that Dark Fate is a huge improvement over what Genesys brought us. Now, some people might not agree with me on that, and that's fine, but all I can say is that if you like Terminator, if you hate Genesys, you can't deny that Dark Fate brought up more to what this franchise could have brought than Genesys did. So it brought more to it. So Genesys was horrible. So guys, that's my review and rant for Terminator Genesys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Look forward to my next video, which will be for the ranking of all 6 Terminator movies in the near future. So guys, thank you very much for watching.